I love it. Thanks. Thanks for coming to my talk. So I have a lot of stuff prepared. And I know I talk very fast. So when I prepped, I was at 15 minutes. So I'm aiming for 30 now. If you realize I'm speeding and like it's really too fast, just do what I just did. Give me a note, because this, in the end, is for you, because I know all this stuff in there already, right? So just give me a note. Also, if you want to tag along on your device, just scan that QR code. It leads you to the same mirror board that I'm on. You will also be able to find one or the other Easter egg on the board that I'm not talking about, because I had to cut stuff out of the out of this talk already. Yeah, this is a mirror board. You can just tag along. I trust in your ability to make a good judgment if you want to like focus on the board that you find there, or listen to me and walk with me through it. When I was that age, in 2006, I was sweet 18, I spent most of my time here. I was a level 60 holy priest on the Frostmourne server. We were one of the first that downed Ragnarok. I was super invested into this world. And I was so invested that I didn't even finish high school. And who would have thought that 20 years later, the skills that I did pick up that time will actually become in handy. And that's basically what I want to talk about today. I joined the Simple in 2016. And this is when this whole journey basically started. I'm a software engineer for way longer, but this is really where the whole thoughts and this momentum and this climax will build up to. I work for the Simple. We help you manage and registering domains. Everything is automated, and you can use our API to automate stuff. We have clients. Just come check us out or talk to me or my coworker Juan if you want to talk about the domain part of stuff. The rest you will see is pretty much related to the Simple, but it's not about the product we are selling. It's more like a story that we did in the internals. I'm part of the registrar operations team, and no, we are not actually sitting in the cellar. This was really the only place where I could find server racks. And our responsibility is to integrate with the different registrars that we are working with. And a year ago, I became the engineering manager of this team. And I learned a few things. So becoming an engineering manager is not a promotion. It's a career change. You just do a very different job than you did before. You're leading people that now are doing the job that you did before. And it actually requires a very different set of skills. And when I think of skills, and this is something that is true to me for a long time in my career already, is that I think of skills as tools. Every skill I have is solving a particular problem. But unlike this imaginary toolbox, these skills are not very sorted, right? When I think of the toolbox that I have at home, it has basically two compartments, and one is for the big tools, and the other one is for the rest, right? And this is for the longest time how I also ordered or did not order the skills that I have, right, and the skills that I possess. I never thought of any compartments, any buckets I could put them into. And I still had this idea of having them in a toolbox because it was the thing I always could come back to. Like when I was facing a problem at work, I looked and thought about the things that I know and the skills that I picked up, which of those skills can actually help me solve this problem. And much like in tools, sometimes it's a hammer, and sometimes it's more a fine-grained tool, right? And part of this job of being an engineering manager is growing people. And when I was learning my new job and picking up new skills, one of the skills that I picked up and that I really connected with is helping people grow. And one of the tools that I discovered to do that is called career vectors. This is not something that I came up with. It's from Marie Williams. You can find her on Twitter. She's also running workshops for engineering leaders. I can really, really recommend. What this tool is doing or helping, it's basically drawing a graph and helps you to categorize skills. You can categorize your skills, or your career basically, into these 6 vectors. There's hands-on, strategy, delivery, org management, commercial, and domain depth. And hands-on means the stuff that you do day-to-day being a software engineer, right? It's writing code, using your editor, all these kind of things. Strategy is all the skills you know and have that gets the company forward for 3 to 6 to 12 months. And delivery is basically combining those things. It's pushing code out, it's moving the product forward, it's getting things out the door, it's finally shipping that thing that's tangling for way too long. Organization management is basically the product from the other side. It's moving your organization forward. Commercial is the understanding of how money is made in your company. And domain depth is, and that's really funny when you work at a domain company, not about knowing everything that the Simple does. No, it's about the domain you're working in, right? For us, it's domains, but it can be for any other company, it can be something else. So if you work for Stripe, it's probably billing. You get the idea, right? And when I saw this, it reminded me of something that I felt I've seen before. It reminded me of something like this. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is the same picture, now very blurry, now a little sharper. This is the Final Fantasy X skill tree. And all of a sudden it clicked. Like when I realized that these skills that I have, I could actually just try to sort them into this skill tree. And I want to quickly explain what you're seeing here, in case you've never played Final Fantasy X, which you really should because it's a great game. Well, now you're stuck in here for the next 40 minutes, so let me help you here, and then you can catch up later. So you basically have this huge board that you saw here, and all the different characters that you can play and control are on the same board. They are starting out in different sections of the board, but they all have, in theory, access to the same skills, much like we are, right? And then when you move up a level, you get an ability point, I think they call it, and you can use it to unlock one of these bubbles. Like, this is unfortunately not how it works in real life. I wish it would. It would be so much easier to learn something new. But the grand scheme of things works. So in Final Fantasy X, this board is, as I said, it's enormous. Like, it's really, really huge. And it's very unlikely that you have all your characters ending up in the same side of the board. Very much like in your team, right? We all start at different places. We all have different interests, while ultimately we all could learn the same things, but for others it takes longer to get there. This reminded me very much of this. And I thought, I want to do this experiment, and I want to wrap this up in a talk, because doing conference talks is something that I'm just really good at. So this would be the right tool for me to do this and to go through this thought process, and it actually worked quite well. So that's what I did, is I tried to draw a similar graph of skills that I have or that I can think of and that exist in the field of software engineering, and put them in this skill tree. And I really needed a sip of water here. So before we dive in, I want to tell you about this super cool vacation spot where I did this. It was right here, right on top of Mount Stupid, right? Everything we talk about is from my perspective. Your perspective is, and totally fairly is okay with that. It's a different thing. I don't know anything, right? I'm just a software engineer for 15 years. Engineering manager for a year. So all the stuff that's in there, it's my perspective. Take it with a grain of salt. It's not the ultimate truth. If you disagree, I'd love to hear your point. Maybe we should discuss it then, not in front of 99 people listening, and then we have a one-on-one conversation. I'd love to have this one-on-one conversation, but I would like to do it after the talk. And it also would be pretty eager to just learn where you can see this skill board extending, right? I could see a world where we make a copy of this talk and I open it up to access for everyone, and we can build this together. This would be a cool exercise, at least I think. Because I realized there's a lot of stuff on the board, and when I did it for the first time in my rehearsal, as I mentioned, it was super overtime. And might be again. Because I really wanted to talk about every bubble on it, and now we will be skipping a few obvious ones. So let's dive right in. What we'll do here is I want to give you an overview. Most of the skills and practices that are on the board deserves their own talk. For example, I have been in this talk in the main hall where he talked about coaching, right? This is a mentorship, and it's a great topic to learn, and it was a really interesting talk. And this whole talk is just a single bubble on here, right? So it should give you an idea. I would love you to walk out of this talk with a list of things you want to learn more about. I want you to enable you to Google for the things that interest you. I want to show you that there are things out there. I hope I can show you things that are out there that you don't know about yet, and we will not have the time to talk about it in detail. Like, this is not what this talk is about. So everything starts with you. As I mentioned, we all start out from a different perspective. And the first branch of this career vector skill tree that I want to look on is the hands-on branch. And when you start with the basic ones, like knowing your editor and knowing Git and stuff, there's also computer science 101, right? You probably want to learn about algorithms, relational databases. And one of my favorite ones is data structures, because when you're like studying computer science, and as I mentioned, I dropped out and never did proper computer science education, they tell you like all the different data structures that exist. Like there's books full of data structures. And now being an engineer for like 15 years, I use lists and hashes. And that's probably enough to solve 99% of the problems that I have, right? It's fair, others are cool. I have reverse linked lists in interviews too, but didn't give me much, to be honest. Another technique is debugging, right? We all love debugging. Well, I don't know if we love it, but we all do it, so we better have to love it or got to love it. And to me, there's like 3 different stages of debugging. The first stage is like you just go into code and put your variable that you have a certain expectancy to. Then that doesn't work. So you go in and you like put more put statements, like, you know, this is 1, 2, 3, I here, really here, and then you just like add more exclamation marks along the way. And if this doesn't help, and usually this solves the problem, right? Let's be frank. Then you can do even more fancy stuff like working with a GDB and a graphic debugger, visual code. All of this exists. And patterns. Took me a long time to actually name enough from the top of my head to fill this list. And the one that I want you to walk away from this talk is the one on the right-hand side, is the solid principle. And this one isn't even a pattern, really. It's more a set of principles that you can apply to software architecture and software engineering. And to me, this really is a code base that follows that principles usually looks great and maintainable. Another really important skill on the hands-on branch is solving problems, right? That's what software engineers are usually paid to do, is like solving problems. That's a big part of it. Doing good code reviews, right? Not just checking it synthetically, because this is what the interpreter is for. You should provide the value that the interpreter cannot do. And really important is when you put code out, and also when you review code, is to leave your ego at the door. And whenever you leave a comment, and this is really important that you do a little introspection when you do a review, that you check if it's really worth commenting on this variable name. Because usually when we do reviews, we cannot weight arguments. So when you leave a comment on a variable name and a comment on a architectural change, they are both weigh in the same thing. So you should really evaluate if those 2 comments are equally important. If you want to have your equal, read and process both of them and perceive them equally. Another really important skill is prioritizing, right? It's not just solving problems, it's also prioritizing those problems. It's understanding these problems, and even more important, and this is for me the high art of hands-on programming, is solving the right problem. So if you, and this is true for the entire presentation, if you see this little truck icon, these are the things that I, for myself, have identified as very important skills to take off. So that's the first branch. The next branch that I want to look into is the delivery branch. So again, delivery is getting code out the door, moving the product forward. Again, it all starts in the middle, and here you just saw we skipped a few, how to deploy code, all the various stuff, pipelines. And we move right to the next step, which you can call project management, right? And there's all the things that have been books out, libraries full of books about Scrum, extreme programming, Kanban, At the end simple, we just recently adopted ShapeUp. I thought it's an interesting methodology also to bring out RailsConf because there's a certain connection that we better neglect as the community now. But ultimately, it leads to the last item here, and that is understanding agile principles and build our own Scrum button, because that's what we often do, right? And that typo is not intentional. Yeah, we just understand agile principles and build whatever works for us and pick out things from Scrum and Kanban and ShapeUp and all those methodologies that exist and build something for the company and team that we can actually make use of. Another important part of getting code out, especially if you progress towards more senior roles and have more people in the team, is like delegating work, right? Working in teams. That is something that is not a particular bubble on this entire board because it doesn't fit in a category specifically, because working in teams is something that is universally true and was hard to fit in, so I just take it as a given. And how to delegate is like, put in structured documentation, reporting progress, all those good things. Making things easier, scoping down, and I learned this term myself when I was building and talking to others about this presentation, is called operational execution. And this is something we all probably do on a day-to-day basis anyway. It's breaking down big tasks into smaller problems. And that is a skill that's really cool or good to invest in and learn more about. Proactive communication, giving regular updates, communicating process, talking about blockers, impediments, whatever gets in your way. And shipping value, ship incremental changes and have the customer benefit from every bit that you release to the customer. And this is one of my favorites, and this is also one that why it has this truck icon. Figuring out your personal productivity hack, right? There's a million tools for this. There's the Pomodoro technique, there's bullet journaling, there is getting shit done, there is, I write down like to-do lists, there's like a million things, I can't list them all. But ultimately, I learned something that works for me, and for me it's a more sophisticated version of a to-do list where I just plan my day out for like a daily to-do list. I cross things off, and at the end of my day, I do another one. But this is not the one-size-fits-all solution. The thing that I really encourage you learning is figuring how your brain ticks and what makes you more productive. And as a German, getting shit done, that is the high art of delivering. The next category is commercial. So commercial means that you understand how your company produces money, right? How is money made at the company that you're working at? And the first thing you want to understand is you want to understand your company's value proposition. So basically you want to answer the question, why should you buy my product? And that, at least for me, or the whole commercial branch for me, was something that took more work. When we think about the Final Fantasy example, it's a thing that was farther away. I had to learn many other things before I went there. And it's still something I'm figuring out. But it is one of the important ones. There's also all the budgeting, finances, reporting, accounting things that are part of a commercial understanding. I think you don't have to go necessarily super deep on those. But it depends. Like if this is your interest, or if your company has something where this is more important than another, or if you're working in a team where this is more important, it might be interesting as well. There's also what I call here user experience interaction design. And if we're honest, in commercial, this really means more deceptive design. So it's about like making your customer buy your product by using certain techniques. And this is something that I think as a community, I don't know I don't want to speak for anyone else. I disagree with this. But it is a pattern that is out there and in the world, and we can't just put it back in the bottle, so we have to deal with it at least. Another important thing is product thinking, right? Understand every change you do, even the change of the database type, how it affects your product. Every change you propose, any PR you make, any tests you fix, like how does this affect the product, and does it and should it? Public speaking, this is part of sales. I'm standing here as part of DN Simple. I've mentioned our company name a few times. This is part of doing commercial work. You now know that we exist, that we do domains, and that they have an engineering manager and registry operations that looks like this and really cares about developing their people. So this is just part of sales. Writing, getting better at writing, adopting the company voice if one exists, asking for one or pushing for one, and then writing feature announcements, writing blog posts. Written documentation is very persistent, or written documents, whatever. Writing is very persistent, and thus it's really good of sharing, and everyone can consume it in their own pace. So it's a good skill to adapt. Doing a competitive analysis, understanding what the competitors are doing, why they're doing it differently, maybe why you should follow, maybe understand why you're leading. Just check what's out there. And this is the first half of the high art of understanding commercial, is listening to customers. Understand what your customer is asking for, and what problems they're having, and how you can solve them. But at least to me, even more important is not listening to customers and have a vision and really push forward, because customers only see what they're seeing and only know what they're knowing, and they will always tell you what's wrong about the project, about your product, and how you can improve the thing that they feel is wrong. They very rarely have a vision for your product, so this could be something that's more for you. So we made it halfway through, checking on time. I think I'm in time. That's great. I hope that we also have a little bit more time at the end for Q&A. So let's move on. So the next thing is strategy. Strategy is providing value for your company 6 to 12 months ahead, right? And what you need to know is you need to know project planning. There's various forms of it, right? Waterfall project, all this agile stuff we talked about, roadmaps, objective key results. And also improving, running retrospectives. That is something that I hope I have seen that's like universally understood, at least from my perspective, is that retrospectives are a good thing. It helps us learn. And in the last companies that I've been at, it was just a widely adopted thing. Understanding and defining culture is another important aspect. And even more important is to understand that culture is lived by, and not just a sentence that's written on the wall. I have seen this way too often, it never works. Culture really is your boss coming in the morning and making coffee for everyone. Like, this is culture. And this should have a truck icon. Kaizen, the art of improving. Kaizen, or the PDCA cycle, is a technique to improve, to constantly improve as a team. So you're making a plan, you implement the plan, you check how this experiment works, and then you act on the results of this experiment. Kaizen is really more, to me at least, is more of a mindset thing. Doing good reporting up, reporting down, that is really important too, especially if you want to do something more long term, because usually reporting is done in a written form, and the written form again is persistent. Making hard decisions, not going after shiny objects, calling the shots, right? This is another thing that's important. And make boring interesting. That is a point that is, I think, just undervalued so often. So years ago, I was at a conference in Dublin, and they invited a front-end engineer from Stripe. And he shared this story that I want to share with you. So he was tasked to implement a credit card form, right? And when you hear this task, implement a credit card form, this sounds super boring. And this is also how we understood it. Like, that is such a boring task, because you know how this works, right? You have long digit numbers, what's it, 8 or something, 12, I don't know. And then there's like the validity, the CVV, and that's usually it. Now they sometimes make it harder with like 3D secure and stuff, but the form is super boring. And he challenged himself to make this task the most interesting and exciting thing he ever worked on in his career. And he really invested in making this fun, making this form great, having rounded corners, making every detail of this design fun and interesting and to engage with. This is how they ended up with the spacing in between the numbers and the guessing the credit card type animation that it always flips when you change a number, and those kind of stuff. And I think this is a skill that when I heard about it, I really admired, and I think it just makes life easier. And also produces better results. And even if you perceive something as boring, there's always a way to tackle it and have an interesting angle on it. Understand your company and business. That's a given, right? If you work for a company, and it's still super up late in this skill tree, because I think that's not something that I picked up very early, I want to say, especially a deep understanding of it. And the next step is understanding business metrics, right? Understand how you want to improve whatever is there, because a business is not measured by runtime of tests, right? There's different values and different metrics to this. And the high art here is think strategically. Any change you make, any decision you want, any call you, any shot you want to call, any decision you make, factor in the strategic long-term impact of this change. This is the high art of strategy, I think. And the next branch I want to look into is domain depth. So domain depth, as you can imagine, obviously, it just depends, right? I can totally draw you a graph on what you need to know and understand if you want to work it in simple, but this is not what this talk is about. So I thought about techniques and skills to learn that are universally applicable. And those are learning on the job, right? Getting good and better at it, finding the interesting bits, asking for help, talking to experts. These are skills that help you to get better understanding the domain depth of your company and product. Also owning your domain depth, right? Following an existing interest might be easier. I always wanted to work for the backbone of the internet infrastructure kind of stuff. So for me, it was I really wanted to learn about it anyway. But it's also totally possible to pick something up, as I mentioned with the credit card example, right? Having an open mind, that's super important. If you don't want to learn it, you probably will have a really, really hard time learning it. And understanding processes, that is something that I also realized only way later in my career, actually, is that it's super important to understand what is happening on a grand scheme of things. And the next level, the exploding brain kind of meme thing, is that when you start visualizing what's happening, because that's the moment where you can really pinpoint to like the weird things that are happening, where the one Excel sheet is like sent around to 5 different people. And you can explain this as often as you want, but when you draw a circle where it's like 5 different names and they all have the same thing sending around, it's so much more obvious, apparently, when it happens. And there's a whole other toolbox you can build. A toolbox and toolbox is about different discovery techniques, right? It could be something like pulling a plug on a server and understand what's happening. It's writing specs that don't exist yet. There's a gazillion things you could do. And also learn more about yourself. Understand what motivates you and what gets you going, especially on the domain depth side of things. Learning to learn. Understand, how your brain ticks and what you need to understand a certain topic. When you would be working with me, you would see me taking notes constantly. I constantly have my laptop out taking notes, and usually I never read the notes again. It's just that I understood that my brain really needs that. The notes are obviously most of the time really shitty. Sometimes I tag them and can look at them again, but I'm really doing this to just help myself to remember things. And that is, again, here the high art of mastering domain depth is having an understanding of the fixed versus the growth mind. And there are many examples to this, and there's many books about this and other talks. But the most illustrative example is how you treat failure. When you encounter any failure, a fixed mind would blame all the things around them, right? It would see all the bad things. When the server crashes, it was obviously the coworker who shipped the bug. It was the other thing that didn't work. It was the specs that didn't catch it. The growth mind really searches for opportunity to grow, right? Could I have written another specs that caught it? Did my review did not provide enough context? Did I offer all the tools and safe nets? And having this mindset and approach it is something that just gets you way further, I would say, in life than working with a fixed mindset, and also has a lot to do with stuff that's not professionally relevant, like walking life happily. So the last thing that I want to talk about, we have 5, is organization development. Again, we start in the middle. And for me, this is where I put the most emphasis, and this is where I put it last. But again, we all start at different spots, so this is just me again. Articulating your thoughts, right? If I think something and it's pretty clear in my head, it doesn't help if I can't translate it to your brain. And the only one of the very few ways we have is speech or words. So I really need to be good in having whatever I have in my head get it like through the one channel we have, because telepathy doesn't work that great, into your head. So articulating your thoughts is really important. Here is the working in teams. As I said, you could have it anywhere. Understanding the team clock, that's one of the tools that, since I learned about it, was super interesting. It basically is the idea that whenever you change a team, it goes through these 4 processes of forming, storming, norming, and performing. And when you think of the last time someone joined your team or you joined a team, I'm pretty sure you would find references to this. So what happens first is that everyone figures out their role, right? There's this new person in the team. How are we dealing with them? What's their role? What's my role now? How does it affect me? Is my role different now? Am I supposed to like teach them? And then this new person often brings in their ideals, their way of doing things, and this often leads to conflict. So that's the storming phase. And then the team settles again, and you find agreements, you find middle ways, you build understanding from each other and each other's viewpoints. And usually, hopefully, you end at some point in the performing phase where you just figured everything out and you can just like get going and get the traction to the ground. And to me, it's really helpful to understand these 4 phases, understand that they exist, and also that there are ways to move into the next phase, right? You don't have to get stuck in storming. Also understanding team topologies, and what's also really important is understanding and working with cultural differences. There's so, like, humans, people, we are so different, and everyone brings personal life and their past life into their work life, and just how to deal with that is a really important skill to pick up. Facilitating retrospectives. This is one of the tools that I've picked up kind of early in my career, and have one of the things that really look used when you think of my toolbox. Like, this is the ones that I have used quite often, and it's working wonders almost every time we pull it out, because it's really helping others to get better, other teams to get better. And in these retrospectives, you can apply many of the things we talked about, but just getting a team to agree to improve as a team, like 1 hour a week or 1 hour every 2 weeks, that's the magic. And then there's this whole branch of communication. I don't want to go over all those bubbles that I have here, but I do want to highlight 2 things. One is nonviolent communication. This is based on the book of Marshall Rosenberg. Let me see if we can move in here without breaking anything. Nah, it's not now. So this is based on the book of Marshall Rosenberg about nonviolent communication. And this helped me tremendously in work, but it also did a lot for my personal life. So I can really recommend reading it. And basically, when you have a conversation, this technique is really cool because it is enough if one party applies it. You don't need 2 parties of a conversation to engage with this. It's just enough if you want to do this, you can do it yourself, no matter if the other person wants to engage in it or not. So this is what, at least for me, makes it really valuable. So the first step in nonviolent communication is to observe what's happening, observing the facts, just checking the factual layers of the conversation. Then you inspect yourself. What does it make to me? What am I feeling when I'm presented these facts? And then from what you're hearing and then the feelings you're feeling, you can derive the needs that are not fulfilled. And from those unfulfilled needs, you try to form a request to the other party to help them fulfill your needs. This, again, fills books and books about it, so we won't get into much more detail on this. And Schultz von Thun and the models of the 4 ears. Have anyone heard of this before? That is amazing, because when I did this talk with my German ignorancy, this is part of German school education. If I would ask this at a German conference, I would have seen like 80% hands. But it's cool, so I can tell you something you don't know what I do. So basically, the model is talking about that a person receiving a message has 4 different ears. And on those 4 different ears, they hear different things. The tests are rad. There's many things in there, right? If you hear this, there's the factual message is that the tests are broken right now and they're not fixed. There is the appeal that you might have heard, right? That you broke them, that I want you to fix them. And there's a relationship layer as well, right? That I think you're very stupid and you break the tests all the time. And there's also a self-revelation layer in there as well, because that I'm revealing that I'm really mad at you. Right? And all those things can be received in this thing. And just being aware of this and having this model, like having heard about this model when you say something, and especially when you have someone reacting to this, just helps a lot, right? You say, oh, you feel offended because you think I meant you broke the test? No, I meant the tests are red. Did you know this? So it just helps navigating conflict and navigating conversations. It's not a solution, basically. It's just like a helpful tool of understanding. Maybe that's a solution. Another tool that I picked up, or a form that I picked up, is peer group feedback. This is basically a tool to help yourself improve. You gather a group of peers, and it's really important that it's peers, so it's not your manager. It can be other managers, that's fair, but it's not your direct manager. And you invite them to a meeting, and you hand them a questionnaire of introspective questions they should answer about you. And then you have a meeting where you talk about this. And also part of this is that one of these questions is, how can they help you, right? How can they help you growing, or what can they provide for you? And then you do this like twice a year. And the really important part is repeating that at best in the same peer group. And it's just a helpful tool for regular introspection. And the cool part is, again, that you're the one in control, right? You can ask your peers to do this. You don't need a quarterly performance review, right, to do with your manager. That's fair. Like, if someone wants that, you can do that. But this is a tool that you can utilize for yourself. Listening. That's an important part. It's weird to make this statement after talking straight out for 36 minutes, but yes, it is important. And I think I'm actually a good listener too if I'm not on stage. But being a good reportee, that is something where I can really recommend the comic Help I Have a Manager, Julia Evans. It's a great tool to understand that you have a role as someone that is being managed, and you can help your manager tremendously in behaving in a certain way or doing certain things. Understanding the difference between management and leadership. I cannot go into too much of detail here. And also being a leader, right? Living leadership. And what's most important to me here, and that is a really hard truth to accept, is lead by example. If you want someone to change, you need to be that change. If you want someone to put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher, you have to be the person putting the dirty dishes in the dishwasher. If you want your coworkers to fix the specs when they broke them, you have to be the one that fixes the specs when you broke them. And this is a lesson I learned from my kids. But it also applies to professional life and basically anywhere in life. It's really hard to demand someone doing something if you're not doing it yourself, right? So if you want to have someone change, the first person you need changing is you, probably. So that's the really complex thing. That's the experiment that I did. And I hope you found a few things to take away. But this was a lot, and you might be like, ugh, this is a lot. Like, I don't want to have to do this and check this like every year or something. And yeah, that's true. It's a lot. So there's the simpler version, right? You cannot just do different particular skills. You can just think of these as vectors, right? On a scale of 1 to 5, how much focus do I want to put, or how good am I in hands-on? How good am I in strategy? How good am I in the domain depth, commercial, organization development? It's just a way, it's a tool to look at your career. And an obvious question that I figure you might have is, Ole, tell me how should I focus on it? How should I skill? Because that's what I proposed in the abstract, so I feel like I need to deliver on that. I want to give you a few examples. And again, this is not universally true, but this is a skill vector of a junior engineer, probably, right? They have a lot of hands-on experience. They have a lot of delivery experience. They have almost no experience in domain depth and strategy, and also very little in the organization development. There's the software architects. They have a very strong suit in strategy and domain depth, and often very little focus. I don't want to say experience, but often very little focus on hands-on. The staff engineer, right, looks again a little differently. Lots of delivery, lots of domain depth, or more average on hands-on and strategy, commercial, org dev. And growth hacker, one of the role descriptions that I'm always struggling with, is they probably would look like this. So very little care about organization development and domain depth, a lot of delivery, hands-on, and company strategy and commercial. So those are just a few examples. And I said you can do this on your the skills you currently have or the focus you want to put in your role. But you can also look at this like this. You can also draw the same graph and look at the job you currently have. Like, how much hands-on work do I have? How much hands-on work do I do? How much strategy? How much delivery? How much commercial? And then the next step is draw the other shape as well. Draw what do I want? Draw the job that you want. And then you have this diff, you have this delta, so you can understand what areas you can improve on if you want to go to this goal, if you want to reach that goal. And what I really, really want you to take away from this is break free from this super or oversimplified thinking of career that looks like junior, senior manager, because this is not a career. This is the single smallest thing we could agree on if we need to have a conversation with like 1,000 people here at this conference, like where you are in your career. But your career is way more. And the career and a career path usually has way more complexity than this. And if you don't build your career, no one will. Like, you're the one responsible. If you have a good manager, they might help you with that. But ultimately, if you don't build your career, no one will. So this was the overview. This is the career vector skills experiments that I did. My name is Ole Michaelis. You can find me on the Ruby Social Mastodon server nowadays. You can also send me an email if you want. I have a website that I don't update. And that is everything I have. Thank you so much.